From the moment we were born, my parents made it very clear who the favorite was. I was the oldest, the experiment child. The one they pushed, tested, and disciplined into shaping up. My younger sister Emily, on the other hand, was the miracle baby, the one who saved our parents' marriage, the one who could do no wrong. While I was constantly reminded of my flaws, too quiet, too stubborn, not sociable enough, Emily was showered with praise for simply existing. It wasn't even subtle. At Christmas, my presents were always a little less shiny, a little less thoughtful. Birthdays. Mine were an afterthought, usually a grocery store cake and a half-hearted card. Emily got parties, balloons, and whatever gift she had circled in a catalog. I learned early not to expect fairness. So when I turned 24 and signed the lease on my very first apartment, I didn't expect congratulations. I expected indifference at best. But deep down, I hoped for at least a flicker of pride, some sign that my parents noticed I'd built something for myself. "Wow," my mom said on moving day, standing in the empty living room with her arms crossed. "It's small, but it'll do for now." My dad gave a grunt of approval, already half distracted by his phone. Only Emily, who was sprawled across my new couch as if it belonged to her, gave the place real attention. She walked around, opening cupboards, peeking into the bedroom, testing out the shower. "Not bad," she said, her tone dripping with false generosity. I could see myself living here. I bit my tongue. For me, this apartment wasn't just walls and rent. It was proof that I could survive on my own, that I wasn't the family disappointment they always painted me to be. I had worked double shifts, cut expenses, and gone without luxuries for months just to save enough to move in. Every lamp, every chair, every dish, I had paid for with my own money. But in one sentence, Emily reduced it to her next potential hand-me-down. I should have known that wasn't just a comment. It was foreshadowing. A week later, my parents came over again, this time without telling me. I walked in after work to find them sitting at my kitchen table, sipping coffee as if it were their home. Emily wasn't with them, which should have been a relief. Instead, I overheard something that made my blood run cold. "Don't worry," my mother whispered, sliding something across the table to my father. "She won't mind. Emily deserves her own space, and this place is perfect for her. Alex will understand eventually." It took me a second to realize what I was seeing. A second copy of my apartment keys. Keys they had made behind my back. Keys they were planning to hand over to Emily, as if this apartment, my apartment, was just another toy to share with the golden child. My father nodded. "We'll just keep it between us. No need to upset Alex right now." Upset me. The rage bubbling in my chest was beyond upset. This wasn't theirs to give. It wasn't some family heirloom or vacation house. It was my hard-earned home. I backed away before they noticed I'd heard. I didn't confront them then. I knew how that would go. They'd brush me off, accuse me of being dramatic, maybe even suggest I was selfish for not wanting to help out my sister. I'd spent my whole life being painted as the unreasonable one whenever Emily was involved. But this time was different. This time I wasn't going to sit back and let them take from me. Emily, of course, wasted no time. The very next day, she showed up unannounced, key in hand, smiling like the cat who had eaten the canary. "Don't look so shocked," she said when I confronted her at the door. "Mom and Dad gave me a copy. They said I could hang out here whenever." She brushed past me, dropping her bag on my chair and kicking off her shoes onto my rug. From that moment, my apartment was no longer my sanctuary. Emily came and went as she pleased, bringing friends over, blasting music, and leaving dirty dishes piled in the sink. More than once, I came home to find her napping in my bed or rummaging through my fridge. When I complained to my parents, they dismissed me with the same tired lines. "She's just young. She looks up to you. This is her way of spending time with you. Don't be so territorial, Alex. Family shares." Family shares. That was their favorite phrase. But somehow, sharing always meant me giving and Emily taking. The final straw came one night when I returned from a late shift to find Emily hosting a full-blown party in my living room. Beer bottles littered the floor, strangers lounged on my furniture, and music rattled the walls. My neighbors glared as I squeezed past them in the hallway, their faces promising complaints to the landlord. I stormed into the apartment, ready to explode. "What the hell are you doing?" I demanded. Emily, perched on the arm of the couch with a drink in hand, grinned. "Relax, Alex. Just a little get-together. Don't be so uptight. Get out. All of you." The room fell silent. Emily laughed. "You can't kick me out of my own place," she said, holding up the keys like a trophy. "Mom and Dad said I could use it whenever I want." That was the moment something inside me broke. For years, I had swallowed the favoritism, the insults, the unfairness. I had told myself to keep the peace, to rise above it, to wait until I was free. But standing there, watching Emily gloat in the apartment I had worked so hard for, I realized something. I didn't need to fight for their respect anymore. I didn't need their approval, their permission, or their twisted definition of family. I needed revenge. Not the kind that involved shouting matches or petty sabotage. No, I was going to do this my way. Quietly, strategically, with the patience I had mastered from a lifetime of being second best. Emily thought she had won the battle. She had no idea I was about to win the war. For the next few weeks, my apartment stopped feeling like mine. I had once loved coming home after work, kicking off my shoes, and enjoying the quiet hum of solitude. But with Emily's key clinking around in her purse, there was no such thing as peace anymore. Some days I'd walk in to find her scrolling on my couch with the TV blasting. Other days, she'd left behind half-eaten takeout containers that stank up the kitchen. Once, I found one of my shirts missing from the closet. When I asked, she rolled her eyes and said, "You weren't even wearing it, why does it matter?" As if my belongings were part of some community pool she had unlimited access to. I tried reasoning with her. "Emily, this is my apartment. You can't just come and go whenever you feel like it." He smirked. "Correction, Mom and Dad's apartment. They gave me the keys. They said I can hang out whenever. Don't act like such a landlord." I clenched my jaw so hard it hurt. It wasn't our parents paying rent, wasn't our parents scrubbing the sink after her messes, wasn't our parents patching together their budget every month to keep this place afloat. It was me. Me and no one else. But I knew complaining to them wouldn't help. When I called my mom and mentioned how uncomfortable it made me, she sighed and said, "Alex, you're being selfish again. Emily doesn't have what you have. She just wants to feel included." Included. That word echoed like an insult. Emily had always been included. She was the star of the show, the golden child. I had clawed my way to independence, and now they were turning that into another handout for her. It wasn't just unfair, it was unbearable. One Saturday morning, I woke up to loud banging in the kitchen. Bleary-eyed, I stumbled out of my room to find Emily making pancakes, batter smeared across the counter, flour on the floor. Two of her friends lounged in my chairs, sipping orange juice from my mugs. "What the hell?" I asked, my voice groggy with sleep. Emily looked up like I was the intruder. "Oh hey, we were hungry. Hope you don't mind, I used your eggs and milk. You can't just bring people here without asking me." Snap. Her friends exchanged awkward looks, but Emily only shrugged. "Relax, it's breakfast. Not like we trashed the place." My hands curled into fists at my sides. "Get them out. Now." Emily tilted her head, amused by my anger. "Why are you always so uptight, Alex? No wonder Mom and Dad said you're impossible to live with. At least I bring some life into this apartment." Something in me snapped at that. "You don't live here, Emily. You're a guest. An uninvited one at that." Her smile sharpened. She reached into her pocket, pulled out the keys, and dangled them in the air. The metal glinted in the morning light, mocking me. "Looks like I do live here," she said sweetly. "Mom and Dad gave me the keys. Which means this is mine too." Her words hit like a slap. In her mind, my apartment was already hers. Not borrowed, not shared, hers. And our parents had fueled that belief. My chest tightened and I realized I was shaking, not just from anger but from something heavier. A lifetime of being second best. A lifetime of having my achievements brushed aside, my hard work diminished, my place in the family stolen from me by a girl who thought everything belonged to her. I didn't respond. I just turned and walked back into my room, locking the door behind me. On the other side, Emily laughed, her voice muffled through the walls. "You'll get over it, Alex. You always do." But she was wrong. I wasn't going to get over it. Not this time. That night, lying awake in the dark, I thought about all the times I had been dismissed. All the times my parents told me to share, to be the bigger person, while Emily was allowed to take without consequences. This wasn't just about the apartment. It was about every birthday where she blew out my candles. Every holiday where her gifts towered while mine sat forgotten. Every time I'd been told to step aside for her. No more. If my parents and Emily thought this apartment belonged to her, then fine. Let her have it. But not in the way she expected. The plan began forming in my mind, sharp and deliberate. I would not scream or fight or beg. I would not try to take the keys back. That would only make me look petty, and they'd twist it into another example of my so-called selfishness. Instead, I would do something they couldn't spin against me. I would leave. Quietly. Thoroughly. Permanently. But I wouldn't leave empty-handed. The next morning I started making subtle changes. I cleaned out one drawer in the bedroom and moved its contents into a suitcase. Later that evening, another drawer. I boxed up books I hadn't touched in months, wrapped fragile dishes in towels, and stacked them neatly in my closet. Whenever Emily barged in, I acted normal, like nothing was happening. She didn't notice. Why would she? She wasn't paying attention to my things, only her reflection in the mirror. By the end of the week, most of my essentials were already out. Clothes, electronics, valuables, all quietly ferried to a storage unit I rented across town. Emily still strutted around like she owned the place, oblivious. Every time she tossed her keys on the counter with a smug smile, I bit back my own smile. 'Cause soon, very soon, those keys would mean nothing. The breaking point came 2 weeks later. I came home late from work, exhausted, only to find Emily sprawled on my bed, scrolling on her phone with her shoes still on. My comforter was stained with makeup, my pillow crushed beneath her careless weight. Something in me hardened. "Get up," I said. She didn't even glance at me. "I'm comfy." "Emily." Up." She turned, finally, with that infuriating smirk. "Why? You're not even here half the time anymore. It's basically my room now." I stared at her, my anger cooling into something sharper, colder. "Fine," I said quietly. "If you want it so badly, you can have it." She frowned, confused by my calm tone. But I didn't elaborate. I just turned away, hiding the small, victorious smile tugging at my lips. Because in that moment, the plan crystallized completely. Emily wanted my apartment. She could have it, all of it. The rent, the bills, the headaches. And when it all came crashing down, when reality finally hit her spoiled little world, I'd be long gone. And for the first time in years I felt free. The morning after Emily declared my bed was basically hers, I knew I couldn't wait any longer. I had already decided to leave, but now the urgency gnawed at me like a hunger. Every time I walked into my apartment and saw her shoes by the door or her makeup scattered across my bathroom counter, I felt like an intruder in my own life. If I wanted peace, I had to move fast. The first step was money. I'd been careful with my paychecks since moving in, But saving for a new place wasn't easy when I was already covering rent and bills. So I doubled down. I picked up extra shifts at work, volunteered for weekend overtime, and cut back on every unnecessary expense. Emily mocked me for it when she noticed. "Why are you always working?" she asked one afternoon, sprawled on the couch with her feet on my coffee table. "Don't you ever want to have fun?" "I'll have fun when I can afford it," I said flatly. She snorted. "Wow, you're boring." I didn't answer. Let her think I was boring. She had no idea I was laying the groundwork for her downfall. The second step was logistics. I rented a small storage unit across town and began moving my belongings in tiny increments, always when Emily wasn't around. A bag of clothes here, a box of books there. Each trip felt like I was pulling pieces of myself out of the apartment, reclaiming them one by one. It was strange, freeing and heartbreaking at the same time. Every item I carried reminded me of the pride I once felt when I first furnished this place. But it also reminded me of the resentment, the invasion, the way Emily had tainted everything. By the end of the second week, the closet was nearly empty. My dresser drawers held nothing but decoy clothes I didn't care about. I even left some shoes behind, scuffed pairs Emily might think were worth stealing. If she wanted to play house, I was going to let her, with scraps. The third step was finding a new apartment. I searched late at night, hunched over my laptop while Emily snored in the other room like she owned the place. At first I was discouraged. Every decent place was too expensive, too far, or already taken. But then I found it. A one-bedroom loft on the other side of the city. Bigger windows, higher ceilings. A neighborhood that actually felt alive instead of suffocating. It was more expensive, yes, but with the extra shifts I'd been grinding through, I could make it work. I signed the lease within a week. For the first time in months, I felt hope. Still, I had to play my role carefully. I couldn't tip Emily off. Whenever she asked where I'd been, I lied easily. Late at work. Out with coworkers. Running errands. She never questioned it. She was too busy enjoying her supposed prize to notice me slipping away. Sometimes I even encouraged her. "I'll be gone late," I'd say casually. "You can use the place if you want." Her grin would spread wide. "Thanks, Alex. Don't worry, I'll take care of it." Take care of it. As if she were doing me a favor by trashing my apartment. It almost made me laugh. By the third week, I had moved nearly everything that mattered to me. All that remained were the big items. The bed, the couch, the cheap TV stand I bought secondhand. They were too bulky to move quietly, but that was fine. I didn't need them anymore. Let Emily think she was inheriting treasures. I also began canceling utilities one by one. Internet first, then cable. I scheduled the electricity shut-off for the week after I planned to leave. Each cancellation was like another string cut, another tie severed between me and this place. And the best part, everything was still in my name. Which meant when the bills came due, they wouldn't land on me. They'd land on Emily. One evening, I came home to find Emily bragging to one of her friends in the kitchen. "Yeah, this is basically my place now," she was saying. "Mom and Dad said I could use it whenever. Honestly, Alex is barely ever here. It's like I've got my own apartment for free." Her friend whistled. "Lucky. My parents would never let me do that." Emily laughed. "Well, they know I can handle it. I'm more responsible than Alex anyway." I stood frozen in the hallway, gripping the strap of my bag so hard it dug into my shoulder. Responsible. Emily couldn't even clean up her dishes without me nagging her. But I didn't walk in. I didn't argue. I just smiled to myself and slipped back out the door. Let her brag. The more convinced she was that she'd won, the sweeter the collapse would be. The day I officially left, I did it quietly. I woke up early before Emily stirred in my bed. Yes, my bed, which she had claimed as hers yet again. I showered, dressed, and walked out the door with the last suitcase in my hand. I didn't even look back. My new loft welcomed me with sunlight streaming through tall windows, the air clean and untouched. I set down the suitcase, sat on the floor, and exhaled. For the first time in years, I felt like I wasn't living in someone else's shadow. But I wasn't finished. The final touch came a few days later. My parents called, sounding oddly cheerful. "Alex," my mom said, "we've decided to let Emily stay at your apartment more often. She's really comfortable there. You don't mind, do you?" I bit back a laugh. "Not at all," I said smoothly. "She can have it." They seemed relieved, even proud of me for being so mature. I hung up the phone with a grin so wide it hurt my cheeks. Because they had no idea I was already gone. The apartment, with its looming rent, its bills, its broken internet, and its soon-to-be shut-off electricity, was about to be Emily's problem. And when the reality hit her, I would be long gone, enjoying my freedom. For now, though, I savored the quiet. No slamming doors, no half-eaten food on the counter, no perfume-scented invasion of my space. Just me in my own home, where every corner belonged to me and only me. Emily thought she had won. My parents thought they'd outsmarted me. But the truth, I had already slipped out of their reach. And I couldn't wait to watch what happened when Emily realized she'd been handed a ticking time bomb. I didn't have to wait long for the handoff. The following weekend, I got the call I'd been anticipating. "Alex," my dad said, his voice carrying that mix of authority and casual dismissal he always used with me. "We've been talking, and your mother and I think it makes sense for Emily to stay in your apartment more permanently. You're hardly ever there, and she really needs her own space. You can crash at your new place or with friends, right?" I almost laughed out loud. Crash at my new place. If only he knew. But I kept my tone calm, almost relieved. "Sure, Dad. If that's what you think is best." There was a pause on the other end, like he hadn't expected me to agree so easily. "Good," he said finally. "That's very mature of you, Alex. We'll take care of Emily." Take care of her. I wanted to tell him he had no idea what he was taking care of, but I bit my tongue. The game was only fun if I played it silently. 2 days later, I stopped by the apartment one last time. The moment I opened the door, I knew Emily had already started moving in. Shoes piled by the entrance, makeup scattered across the counter, and a stack of shopping bags sat in the corner of the living room like she was building a shrine to herself. She appeared from the bedroom in one of my old shirts, one I hadn't cared enough to pack, and grinned. "Hey, roomie." I forced a smile. Not for long. She frowned for half a second before waving it off. "Whatever. Mom and Dad already said I could have the place. Thanks for not making it a big deal." That smugness nearly made me snap, but instead I just nodded. "No problem. Enjoy it." Her eyes widened slightly, like she hadn't expected me to surrender so easily. For years, she had thrived on conflict, on pushing me until I exploded so she could play the victim. But now I was serene, untouchable, and it unsettled her. The official handoff happened the next weekend. My parents drove over with Emily's extra suitcases, beaming as if they were delivering her to a castle rather than a 2-bedroom rental with utilities about to expire. "This is such a wonderful step for you, Emily," my mom gushed, kissing her cheek. "Your first real place." My father handed her the keys with a flourish, as if presenting a crown to royalty. "Take good care of it. It's yours now." I stood by the door, arms crossed, watching the whole performance like it was a badly scripted play. None of them noticed my quiet amusement. Because the truth was, they weren't handing her the keys to an apartment. They were handing her a mess. A money pit. A responsibility she had no clue how to handle. And I was going to enjoy every second of the fallout. The first signs of trouble came quickly. 3 days after the handoff, I got a text from Emily. "Emily, do you know why the Wi-Fi isn't working? Must be an outage." You should call the provider. Of course, I already knew the provider wasn't coming. I'd cancelled the service 2 weeks ago. 2 days later. Emily, the cable's gone too. WTF. Weird. Maybe check the account. Another pause. Emily, wait. The account's in your name. I didn't reply. The electricity shutoff was my favorite part. I had timed it perfectly. 2 weeks after my departure, just when Emily was fully settled in. It was late evening when she called, her voice shrill over the phone. Alex, the power's out. The whole apartment is dark. What did you do? I leaned back in my new loft, sipping tea by the warm glow of my lamp. Sounds like the bill wasn't paid, I said casually. Bill? She screeched. You never told me there were bills. I nearly choked on my tea trying not to laugh. It's an apartment, Emily. Course there are bills. Rent, utilities, internet. Didn't Mom and Dad explain that to you? There was a long, stunned silence on the other end before she shouted, This isn't fair, and hung up. I set my cup down, grinning. It was more than fair. It was justice. Within a week, the complaints started rolling in from my parents. Alex, my mom said over the phone, her voice tight with frustration. Why didn't you tell Emily how expensive that apartment is? The rent, the utilities. It's ridiculous. Kept my tone neutral. I managed it just fine. I guess I assumed you knew what you were asking her to take on. Well, she can't afford this, my dad barked. You should have said something before we moved her in. I almost laughed at the hypocrisy. For months, they had ignored my protests, dismissed my boundaries, and handed over my home like it was a toy. Now suddenly it was my fault. I thought you wanted her to have it, I said smoothly. You gave her the keys. I just stepped aside like you asked. The silence on the line was delicious. Meanwhile, Emily was drowning. Her friends stopped coming over when they realized the Wi-Fi was gone and the fridge was empty. The party girl couldn't throw parties without power, and her glamorous own apartment lifestyle quickly lost its shine. She called me nearly every night begging for help. Alex, can't you just pay the bills this month? Please. I swear I'll pay you back. I never agreed. Sorry, Emily. I got my own rent now. Can't cover 2 places. Sometimes I could almost hear the tantrum brewing on the other end of the phone before she slammed it down. But other times there was something else in her voice. Desperation. Panic. The slow realization that for once in her life, Mommy and Daddy couldn't clean up the mess fast enough. The final blow came in the form of a notice from the landlord. I knew it was coming. I had left the account in my name long enough to make sure it would reach her directly. Emily! My dad bellowed over speakerphone the day they found it. Do you know what this is? An eviction notice. How could you let it get this far? I didn't need to be in the room to picture her tears, her sputtering excuses, her insistence that none of this was her fault. And maybe it wasn't, at least not entirely. But it also wasn't mine. That night, I stood in my new loft, the city lights glowing through the wide windows. For the first time in my life, I felt no guilt, no obligation to smooth things over, no pressure to step aside for Emily. They had handed her the keys. And I had simply walked away. The switch was complete. The eviction notice was only the beginning. For the first time in her life, Emily was staring down a problem that couldn't be solved with a pout, a whine, or a handout wrapped in pretty paper. Rent was due. Utilities were overdue. The landlord was done being patient. And the best part, my parents were starting to crack under the weight of it all. At first, they scrambled to cover for her. Don't worry, sweetheart, my mom said to Emily one night while I listened quietly on speakerphone. We'll help you out this month. Next month will be better. But next month wasn't better. Emily had no steady job. She picked up a few shifts at a boutique, but she spent most of her paycheck on clothes she needed for work. When bills came around again, she was short, again. This time my dad's tone was harsher. Emily, this is unacceptable. You can't just expect us to keep paying for you. But you gave me the apartment, she shot back. You said it was mine. Her words hit like a dagger. I almost wanted to laugh. Because that was true. They had given her the apartment. And now they were realizing what that meant. Meanwhile, the landlord wasn't patient either. By the third month, he'd slapped late fees onto every bill. He called constantly demanding payments. Emily started ignoring his calls, letting them pile up in voicemail. Then came the visits. One evening, she texted me in all caps. Emily. The landlord just showed up at the door. Emily. He says I owe him 3 months' rent. Emily. This is your name on the lease, fix this. I read those texts from my loft, sipping coffee with a grin. Then I typed back slowly. Me no, Emily. You fix this. You live there. The rage she sent back was immediate. Emily, you set me up. Emily, you're evil. Emily. Mom and Dad will hear about this. Let them. I had nothing to hide. Sure enough, my parents called that night. Alex, my mom snapped. The landlord is saying the lease is still in your name. What were you thinking? You can't just abandon it. I didn't abandon it, I said calmly. I moved out. You gave the keys to Emily. That was your choice. But the responsibility is still yours, my dad barked. Funny, I said lightly. You didn't say that when you told Emily it was her apartment. The silence on the line was glorious. They couldn't argue with me without admitting the truth, that they'd handed her something she couldn't handle. Finally, my mom said weakly, You should have explained it better. I assumed, I said, that at her age she knew apartments cost money. I guess I was wrong. And then I hung up. That was the moment the balance shifted. For the first time in years, I wasn't the scapegoat. I wasn't the one blamed for everything. The mess was undeniably Emily's, and by extension theirs. And they hated it. By the 4th month, things spiraled. The power was cut off completely. No more temporary shutoffs. This was final. The water followed a week later. I saw Emily once during that time outside a cafe. She looked disheveled, her hair unwashed, her makeup smeared. She was wearing the same oversized hoodie 3 days in a row. She spotted me and stormed over. Are you happy now? You ruined my life. I raised an eyebrow. You did that yourself. You could have warned me. You could have helped. I did help, I said evenly. I paid every bill on that apartment for years while you freeloaded. The one time you had to manage it yourself, you crashed. That's not my fault. Her eyes filled with tears, but not the kind that earned her sympathy anymore. These were the tears of someone who finally realized the world didn't revolve around her. Mom and Dad said you're cruel, she whispered. Maybe, I said. Or maybe I'm just done being your doormat. I walked away, leaving her on the sidewalk. For once, I didn't look back. By the 5th month, the eviction came. Emily had ignored too many notices, missed too many payments. The landlord finally had enough. Her things, her precious clothes, her makeup, her purses, were dumped onto the curb in boxes. I drove by once, purely out of curiosity. She was sitting on the sidewalk, sobbing into her hands while strangers passed by, glancing at her like she was another cautionary tale. My parents were there too, frantically shoving boxes into their car, their faces pale with shame. I didn't stop. I didn't roll down my window. I just drove by slowly, letting the scene etch itself into my memory. It wasn't glee I felt, it was satisfaction. A deep, quiet satisfaction that justice had finally been served. After that, Emily moved back in with my parents. The golden child, defeated, stripped of her crown, returned to the nest she never really left. But something had changed. The calls and texts demanding my help stopped. My parents no longer bragged about Emily's potential or responsibility. Instead, I heard the weariness in their voices, the frustration they had once reserved for me. "She just won't grow up," my mom muttered once on the phone, as if realizing it for the first time. "She's not ready for independence," my dad admitted. I wanted to laugh, to say, "You think?" But I didn't. I just let them stew in the truth. Because they had finally seen what I had known all along. Emily wasn't the golden child. She was just spoiled. And spoiling always rots. In my loft, life was better than ever. I got a promotion at work thanks to all the extra hours I'd been pulling. My new neighbors were friendly. The coffee shop down the street knew my order by heart. And every night I fell asleep in a bed that no one else had claimed. The contrast couldn't have been sharper. While Emily languished in the wreckage of her entitlement, I thrived in the freedom I had built for myself. And the best part, I hadn't lifted a finger to destroy her. I hadn't screamed, fought, or schemed. I had simply stepped aside, let her take what she thought she wanted, and watched her choke on it. Sometimes revenge doesn't need fire or fury. Sometimes it just needs patience. The downfall was complete. Emily lost her apartment, her illusion of independence, and the pedestal she'd always stood on. My parents lost their excuses, their blind devotion, their fantasy of the perfect daughter. And me gained peace. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the forgotten child, the scapegoat, the background character in Emily's story. I was the one who walked away. I didn't hear from my parents for nearly a month after Emily's eviction. The silence was strange, almost unsettling. For years they had used me as their sounding board, their problem solver, or when all else failed, their scapegoat. But after Emily's downfall, the calls stopped. No guilt trips. No lectures. No demands. Just silence. And for me, silence was bliss. In that time I threw myself into my new life. My loft became a sanctuary. I decorated slowly, carefully, only with things that felt right. Sunlight pooled across my new rug in the mornings, the city hummed outside my window at night, and for the first time in years, I felt like every inch of space truly belonged to me. No Emily sprawled across my bed. No parents barging in with their endless critiques. No sense of being overshadowed. Just me. It was freedom I hadn't realized I'd been starving for. Eventually, though, the silence broke. One evening my phone buzzed. It was my mom. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Alex," she said, her voice weary. "We need to talk." I could already guess what this was about. "What now?" "It's about Emily," she sighed. Course it was. It always was. She's struggling. She's back home, but she's miserable. She keeps saying you set her up to fail. That you abandoned her. I laughed, the sound sharp even to my own ears. I didn't abandon her. I left my apartment. My apartment, after you all decided it was hers. I didn't set her up. I just let her live in the fantasy you created. "Alex," my mom scolded softly. "That's cruel." "Cruel." Snap. Do you know what was cruel? Watching her invade every part of my life while you excused it. Watching you hand her the keys to my home like I didn't matter. Watching you dismiss me every time I begged for boundaries. That was cruel. Silence crackled through the line. For once, she had no ready defense. A week later my dad called. His tone was sharper, angrier. "Alex, you've made your point. Emily suffered enough. You've embarrassed this family. Now it's time to stop gloating and help her get back on her feet." I laughed again, but this time it was softer, almost pitying. "You still don't get it, do you? I didn't push her down. I just stopped carrying her. You were the ones who set her up to believe she could take what wasn't hers. You gave her the keys. I just walked away." "You're being selfish," he growled. "I'm being free," I corrected. "There's a difference." And then, just like with Mom, I hung up. After that, the calls dwindled again. My parents no longer had the energy to fight me. They were too busy cleaning up Emily's mess. Financial, emotional, reputational. I heard whispers through extended family. Emily had stopped posting her glamorous photos online. Her friends had drifted away. She was working part-time, sulking under my parents' roof. No longer the golden child everyone envied. The pedestal was gone. And without it, Emily was just another adult who had to face reality. One afternoon months later, I ran into her at the grocery store. She looked smaller somehow, diminished. Her hair was tied back messily, her hoodie was frayed, and her eyes darted away when she saw me. But she didn't get to slip past unnoticed. "Emily," I said evenly. She froze. Slowly she turned. "Alex." We stood there for a moment, the silence heavy between us. For once, she didn't smirk. She didn't posture. She didn't act like the world owed her something. Instead, she whispered, "Why did you let this happen to me?" I studied her face, the cracks in her confidence, the weariness that years of coddling had hidden from her. And I felt something unexpected. Not anger, not triumph, but clarity. "Because," I said quietly, "it was never my job to protect you from reality. You wanted my life handed to you. You got it. And reality came with it." Her eyes filled with tears, but she didn't argue. She just nodded faintly, as if deep down she knew I was right. Then she walked away, shoulders slumped. And I let her go. That night I sat in my loft, the city lights twinkling outside. For the first time in my life, I felt like I wasn't competing anymore. Not for attention, not for approval, not for space to exist. Revenge hadn't come from cruelty. It hadn't come from screaming or fighting. It had come from stepping back and letting the weight of their choices crush them. Emily had been handed the keys to my apartment, the symbol of everything I had built for myself. But she didn't know I'd already left. And that was the beauty of it. They thought they'd stolen something from me. In reality, I had given them nothing but an empty shell and the consequences they deserved. The real prize, the freedom, the independence, the peace was already mine. As I poured myself a glass of wine and sank into the comfort of my couch, I thought about the long road that had led me here. Years of being second best. Years of silence. Years of swallowing bitterness until it became part of me. Now it was gone. And all it had taken was walking away. The final laugh wasn't loud. It wasn't cruel. It was quiet, peaceful. It was me living a life that finally belonged to me and no one else.